Welcome to today's session, everyone.
We are PreMedCC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021.
Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities, with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone.
We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students,
people that lack the financial resources, or just those who do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific Standard Time.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all of our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel.
Many of our sessions will end up with a Q&A with the speakers.
Any questions that you have, you may put it in the Q&A session on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answer.
After you have attended our event, you can log into our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with the upcoming events or just want to tell your pre-med friends about the PreMedCC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok as @PreMedCC.
All right, perfect. Everyone, welcome to today's session. We're here with Mindy Rosser. So let me just give her an introduction real quick. Mindy Rosser is a beacon for innovation and proficiency in leveraging LinkedIn for business enhancement. Specializing in fostering meaningful connections and conversations, she assists with B2B entrepreneurs and industry thought leaders and experts to engage profoundly with their audiences, prospects, and contemporaries through a tapestry of trust, authenticity, and consistencies. With a rich history in an agency sphere and startup ecosystem, Mindy has adaptedly transitioned to working with business mandates, fine-tuning their social presence, and crafting remarkable thought leadership narratives. Her expertise extends to nurturing business pipelines populated with ideal clients, identified and engaged via LinkedIn dynamic platforms. All right, please welcome Mindy Rosser.
Thank you so much, Nishita. That was beautiful. So I'm super stoked to be here with all of you. As many of you know, I am a part of PreMedCC too. So it's really, really exciting to talk about LinkedIn. I feel like LinkedIn is one of those platforms where a lot of us feel a little bit intimidated, or we're really busy. So trying to figure out what do I do on LinkedIn? Is it necessary? Should I just focus on my studies? How does it apply to me, especially as a future medical leader? So please, please, please put your questions into the chat because I am happy to answer any and all questions related to LinkedIn, personal branding, anything along those lines. So feel free, put them in the chat, and I will definitely address them at the end. I have a lot of slides. So we have a lot to go through today regarding LinkedIn. If you want to follow along and kind of do some of the activities as I'm talking, feel free. If you have your computer in front of you, if you want to pull up your own LinkedIn and kind of, go back and forth from the slides to your screen, it's perfectly fine. You can make changes as we go. So that's a really good and encouraged option if you have your computer handy. All right, I'm going to share my screen here, and you should be able to see it. Put it in slideshow view. I think we're all good. All right, so I'm going to start with the slides, but we will hop back and forth between the slides and LinkedIn. So you'll actually know what I'm talking about when I start getting a little nerdy on LinkedIn. So we are talking about how to create your profile as a future medical leader. It is really, really important that if you do not have a LinkedIn profile yet, that you create one after this workshop. So if you're like, do I really need one? I have Instagram, or maybe I'm kind of on social media. It is really, really important, especially as you get further in the process, when you start getting closer to medical school, or as you start progressing in your career, you're definitely going to want to make sure that you have a profile. It doesn't have to be perfect, but make sure you set one up. So in today's workshop, I'm going to walk you through how to optimize your LinkedIn profile so that you can set yourself apart on LinkedIn to achieve that long-term success, and then learn how to easily use LinkedIn. I don't know about you, but I don't have a ton of time to spend on LinkedIn these days, especially it is, midterms are right around the corner and we are all very, very busy and focused, which is good. But what can we do in a few simple ways to just make the most of LinkedIn during our busy phases? So today, get ready to optimize because we are going to work on our profiles. So the first part we're going to start with the LinkedIn profile. So we're going to talk about your LinkedIn opening. What goes at the top of your profile? Then we'll talk about your LinkedIn headline. So that's kind of like the tagline, the kind of your mission statement that follows you around LinkedIn. Then we'll get to your about section. So that's like your bio, that's like your summary. What should you put there? Should you put anything there? How long does it need to be? Then we'll get to your LinkedIn experiences. So even if you don't have an extensive work history, you still should put something in this section. So we'll talk about what that could look like. Then we'll talk about the LinkedIn extras, like all those fun little things that you can add to your profile that really make it stand out and make it visually attractive. We'll talk about some do's and don'ts, what to do on LinkedIn, what not to do, also how to connect. So if you're curious about connecting with people on LinkedIn and networking, we'll talk about that there. And then there will be time at the end for that Q&A. So diving right in, your personal brand does begin on LinkedIn. And as a future medical leader, as a pre-med student, wherever you are in your journey, you need to have a profile. And I've mentioned that before, and I'm going to say it again. You need to set up a LinkedIn profile. But if you had to think about your profile now, if on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rank your profile? Would you like, how do I feel about my profile on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 being like amazing, 1 being like, I don't have a profile yet, Mindy. So please tell me how to set it up. But just write that number down. Or make a note of that number in your head, because by the end of this presentation, we'd like to take that up a notch or two, so you can really feel confident with your LinkedIn profile and where it's going and what you should do next. So you can see this is a snapshot of my current profile. So as Nishida mentioned, I am a social selling strategist, and also a pre-med student. So trying to balance those two things on my profile is a little bit tricky. Some of you may be in a similar situation. So when we get to the headline section, I'll talk about how to address that. I will also show you some examples. So if you are doing more than one thing right now, that's great. If you are simply focused on your studies and as a student, I'll also show you some examples of people who have student-only profiles, so you know what that could look like as well. So do not be intimidated by the profiles that I'm going to share with you. They're more for inspiration than trying to carbon copy them. All right, so let's take a look at some profiles. I'm going to X out of this and we will hop over to LinkedIn. So this is mine. So feel free if you'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love connecting. So you can connect with me during this presentation, after this presentation. This is my profile here. Now let's take a look at a few others. So this one is a medical student at Johns Hopkins. And what I liked about his profile was that he had a nice banner image up here. Obviously, it's tied to the organization he's affiliated with, but it's nice and colorful. So it's bright, it stands out. It doesn't have like the little blank LinkedIn banner behind him. So that looks really, really nice. You'll see he also has a good headline here. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. Once we get down further, I wish you would have something in his about section, because you really don't want just one line here, but it's better than nothing. He also has a featured section though, which I really like. We will talk about this later and what you can put in this section to really make your profile visual. So it kind of gives it a little bit more of that like Instagram, TikTok-y feel, where it doesn't feel so dry and just very, very text heavy. Obviously he has a lot of followers and he's pretty active on LinkedIn. And then you'll see his experience section here, which is also very visual. So you'll see that there are some visuals below these different descriptions here, which also makes his profile stand out. It also helps to keep his profile a little easier to read. So it's not just so much text all the way down the page. So and we will talk about this later too, if you have visuals that you can add underneath your experience sections, that's always nice to do if you have them. Then we have his education here. And again, he adds more visuals. So you can tell there's kind of a little bit of a theme. He likes visuals. He has a lot of pictures. So if you have them, add them. He has a little bit of volunteer. Also, he has skills. He has some recommendations here that are somewhat recent. Recommendations are really helpful, especially as you get further in the process and you want to show some credibility. Recommendations are awesome. He has publications, which if any of you are getting involved in research, anything like that. Make sure to list your publications. That's very, very helpful. Honors and awards, it's good to include those as well. Test scores can be helpful. Some people like to list them here, some people not so much, but that is an option just so you can see what it looks like here on LinkedIn. So I really like his profile. It's very well put together and ties together nicely. Now let's take a look at Sydney. So she's a pre-med. And you can see she has like a little inspirational thing behind her profile image here in her banner. You can do something like that to make sure that that section is not blank. She has a little bit of an expressive picture, I would say, for her headshot. So it's a little less formal than you'll see from a lot of people on LinkedIn. It's up to you. I like mine just a tad bit more formal, but hers is very nice and it works well with the header image that she has. She also has, again, a short about section. I'd like to see a little bit more there, but at least there is something there. She has a growing network, so not a ton of followers yet, but she is starting to post periodically. So every couple of months, she's posting on LinkedIn. You can see here with her experience. It's a really good way to handle experience if you don't have a lot of work experience yet. Go ahead and list your even your education. So go ahead and put your university, put your community college, put that here, especially if you are worried that this is going to look blank, because this will also let people know that's a focus for you right now. So that's a really good way to handle this section if you don't have a lot of, side work or any part-time jobs that you really feel comfortable listing here. She also lists some other things like University of Illinois housing as president here. So I think that's also good too. So you can weave in some activities here as well, even if they are not full-time work-related roles. You can be creative with this section. She also lists that she's on the student board. So I think that's also important. It's showing leadership. So even though she's not very far in her career, when you come to her experience section, you say, it looks like she is very involved. She's contributing, she's giving back, and she looks like a leader. You get to her education, obviously list your education here as well. Licenses and certifications, those are helpful to have if you have them. Skills, you want to make sure to add those as well. Honors and awards, interest. All right, let's take a look at just one more. So this is Sabrina. She's a pre-med student. She has on her profile, you see these little hashtags here where it says talks about, and she has cool little hashtags. How does she get those? There is something called creator mode on LinkedIn that you can easily toggle on. That will allow you to have up to five hashtags here that are related to things you're interested in. I like that she lists pre-med, women in STEM, and volunteering. I think those are great. You can also be creative with these hashtags. You can create your own if you would like, but really think about the causes that matter to you. Think about if you have already thought about a specialty or you're involved in any type of volunteer organization. Make sure to list those here because it really just highlights what you're really interested in, and it's a visual cue for people. Okay, so obviously she doesn't have a ton of followers yet. It's okay. We all start somewhere. So if you don't have 500 plus connections on LinkedIn, people aren't expecting that at this stage. So don't fret about that. I've had a lot of people worry if they try to get to 500 connections really fast. You're a student, you're focused on your education. It's okay. Take it low and slow and just grow that network over time gradually. All right, so she has a nicer about section. So what I like is she is telling a bit of her story here. So she's talking about she's a pre-med, where she went, where she's attending college, what she hopes to do. So this is a great way to kind of shape your narrative and really think about what story do you want to tell. You can also use some of this copy when you are further along in the process and applying to medical school. You can kind of reference your about section if you've done a good job writing that as well. So you really want your personality to come through. You really want your ambition, your future to come through, what you're really looking to achieve, and you want to focus on your skills. All right. So that section is very, very well done. I really like what she does there. And then you can see her experience here. Again, like I pointed out before, she lists her education here. She's also a part of the Charitable Hands Foundation as a founder. So it looks like she's giving back to her community as well. This looks excellent. We don't care that she has 23 connections and not a huge following. That's inconsequential. It's really about building her presence and really establishing herself as a leader and as someone who is going to progress and wants to become a future physician someday. So this is a really good profile. So yeah, take a look at these profiles afterwards too, if you're trying to reference some. What I find really helpful when I'm working on my profile or helping others on theirs is just looking at other peers' profiles, especially good ones, and getting some inspiration from those so you can almost model your profile after theirs. All right, so I hope that was helpful, kind of looking at some in the wild before we actually go further into the slideshow where we kind of break down the different sections. All right, so section number 1, your LinkedIn headshot. So that's your picture, your profile picture, and your header image, that's the banner that's behind you on LinkedIn. They must look professional. So you really want to do a good job here and make sure they're up to date. There was one fresh college grad that I worked with, and he had a picture on LinkedIn from his high school. You know, he had like his senior picture there. And I'm like, you might want to update that. So make sure that your picture is not completely out of date because he looked like a little kid. So make sure that you do keep your headshot updated. I like to recommend that you update it, you know, once every couple of years, especially if you change hairstyles or anything like that. For those ladies, for those guys who do that, just make sure that your headshot looks clear, it's professional, and it's close up. You don't want to be so far away from the camera where it's hard to see your face. Your face, head, and shoulders are what's most important to get in the frame on that LinkedIn profile headshot. So here are some really, really good examples of nice looking headshots. So make sure that you look professional. So what would you probably wear to an interview if you were interviewing for a job or a role? That's what you want to dress up for. So make sure you're not too casual here. You don't have to wear like a suit and tie for the guys, or, you know, you don't have to look too overdressed, but just look nice. It's just like, just do that little extra something to look like you are ready to do an interview or look professional in real life. And again, you don't have to get professional headshots done. You can do it with your phone. So you can see like some of these, just put it in portrait mode, make sure you have nice lighting, go outdoors and take a nice headshot, or you can just do it against a blank wall. As you see in some of these, it's kind of like a blank wall, but the background is not too much in focus. Those are nice as well. So you don't have to spend money on this, just grab a friend, take a nice photo. Now your LinkedIn header, what should you put here? What I really like to see in this section is you in action. So if you are doing research, if you volunteer, if you're part of a community, if you're engaging with other people in some way and there's like a group photo and you're in it, those are my favorite images to put there in your LinkedIn header area. So if you have one of those, use that because it shows that you're involved. It shows that you're a leader, it shows that you're a contributor. Otherwise, you can put things that are like kind of like what we looked at with some of the other photos. Here's some other examples, but reinforce who you are and what you do. So you can put like some stock photos. You'll see there's some stock photos here. You could also put you at work or kind of put your picture in the middle like Olivia does in that middle. And you can easily do something like this to create a banner on Canva. So canva.com, they're free, just get the free version and type in LinkedIn header, and it will pull up a template for you, and you can just pop in different images there if you would like. You can also do just like a straight up skyline. So if you're in a metropolitan area, I'm near Chicago, so I just grabbed a Chicago skyline image. You could put that behind your headshot. So just think of something to put in that header area. It doesn't have to be perfect, but don't leave the blank look. You don't want it to be blank behind your headshot. All right, so match your LinkedIn headshot and your header image. Make sure they work well together. I have had some clients who would choose like this really cool banner image, but because of the placement of the headshot on LinkedIn, it was right over the cool part of the image. So it kind of cut off part of their banner image. So just put it up on LinkedIn, make sure it works well together, switch it out if you need to, but just make sure to look at that as you are updating. All right, so moving on to section number 2. Your LinkedIn audio intro, otherwise known as the name pronunciation space. So a lot of people are like, what? There's an audio intro on LinkedIn? I didn't even know that was possible. If you go to my profile, you'll see it. I have like the little speakerphone next to my name. So if you click on that, you will actually hear like a very short 10-second message saying, hello, my name is Mindy Rosser. This is what I'm interested in, and I'd love to connect. So what that does when you add an audio intro, it's really, really helpful in just like establishing and adding, you know, the voice to your name. It lets people kind of put two and two together, which will set you apart as well, and will also let people know, oh, right, you put that extra mile, you did that little extra effort to make your profile stand out. So it's a way to connect with people on LinkedIn. So again, briefly state who you are and invite them to connect. So you'll see right here with Bridget's profile, she has that little speakerphone icon. So when you click that, it will play a message. Now to do this for yourself, you will have to use your mobile device. So make sure you have your phone and go to your LinkedIn profile on your phone, and you will be able to edit the section in that opening section. You'll see it has like a little pencil icon, and it will say name pronunciation. So you'll click that and you'll literally just record right there on your phone. So it's very, very short, but it's kind of like your elevator pitch. So if you have an elevator pitch or you want to let people know what you're focused on, what you'd like to do, who you'd like to connect with, maybe you're looking to get involved in some research opportunities, whatever that may be, put that in that message. It's a really great way to connect with people. You'd be surprised how many people click that speakerphone to actually listen to your message. So here's the formula to script it. If you're like, Mindy, I don't know what to say. It's 10 seconds. I don't like talking. All right, so it's a greeting. So just like hello, hey, whatever you say as your greeting, your name. So it's important to make sure to state your name in this section because LinkedIn created it as a name pronunciation section. So when people click this, they expect to hear you say your name so they know how to pronounce it. Then also list your interest, 1 to 2, just 1 to 2 things that you're interested in. And then invite them to connect with you. It's a great way to just kind of like the old fashioned handshake, like let's connect. I'd really like to get to know you. All right. So moving on from the audio intro, we talked about the opening. We talked about the audio intro. Let's talk about some of the not so exciting stuff, but personalizing your URL and your profile settings. And you'd be surprised how many people I come across who have their picture hidden. So you can't even see their profile photo and they don't even know it. So there are some really simple settings I'm going to show you on LinkedIn that are important to make sure you have them correct. So it'll take you 60 seconds to do, won't take you long. Once you've done it once, you don't have to do it again. But with your URL, you also want to make sure this looks good. You want it streamlined. Ideally, you want your first name and your last name. If you have all of those funny little numbers at the end of your LinkedIn profile URL, you want to get rid of those. I'm going to show you how to do that just in a moment. But keep in mind, first name, last name. If you have a common name, somebody may already be using your first and last name. So throw in like a middle initial, or you can throw in like, I could do Mindy Rosser PreMed or something like that, just to make it a little bit different if you have a common name. All right, so these are the following settings. You can take a screenshot of this. You'll have access to the slides after this as well, but I'll show you what these are on LinkedIn itself in a moment. So you want to make sure to edit your URL, make sure it's first, last name. Make sure your profile's public visibility is on. That means people can find you on LinkedIn. If it's off, people aren't able to find you unless they're connected to you. You want to make sure your profile photo is visible, so it's set to public. You also want to click show on everything. I'll show you what that means. And then you want to make sure you know what your public profile looks like to other people. And again, I will show you what that looks like on LinkedIn. So let's hop over to LinkedIn. If you have your profile handy, you can do this along with me because it's really easy to do. And you'll see right here on your profile, it says public profile and URL. Click that little pencil icon. All right, now you should see a screen that looks something like this. All right, so once you're here, you'll see edit your custom URL at the top. You'll click that pencil icon, and this is where you can change it to your first and last name and delete all those numbers, all those extra characters. So go ahead and play with that. If you can't get your first and last name, again, start typing in other little variations of it, and then click save. And then it's all saved. And then you are good to go. Now, keep in mind, your old URL, if you were using that anywhere, it's fine. It will redirect to your new one. So do not fret. If you have given out your old URL or have it linked somewhere else, it will not break the links. It will redirect to your new one. Okay. All right. So now the visibility. So again, this is really easy, but just make sure it's all green. So here we are with edit visibility. Your profile's public visibility should be on. You want to make sure that it is set to public. You'll see right here, public. Make sure you click there. That's your profile photo. You want to make sure people can see your face. And then just make sure all of these, however many areas you have here, make sure they're all show, and they're all green. So make sure they're all toggled on. Anything you put on LinkedIn should be public. Everybody should be able to see it. So, make sure it's all toggled on. All right, now on the left side of the screen, we can see what my public profile looks like. So it's kind of hard to see and understand what other people are seeing when they come to your profile. So you can kind of see if somebody was searching for me, this is what would pop up when they look me up on LinkedIn. So it's kind of nice to just kind of give it a look and make sure you're happy with it. Anything, you're not going to change anything here, but that's just how it will look when you appear in search. Okay. So again, if you have questions or you want me to go back through this, just pop it in the chat and we'll tackle it at the end. All right. Okay, so section number 4, we're going to talk about your LinkedIn contact info. So this is also important. A lot of people overlook this, but if you are doing any type of outreach on LinkedIn, if you're trying to get connected, maybe you're looking for research opportunities, you're reaching out to other people in the space, maybe you're volunteering, maybe you're part of an organization, you're doing some activism or anything like that. You want to make sure your contact info is here so people know how to reach you outside LinkedIn. So your LinkedIn profile, it will show, skipping to that section yet. Your LinkedIn profile link will show at the top. Remember, we just fixed it. So hopefully all those ugly numbers and letters are gone. Then your website, if you would like to list any websites here, you can. You don't have to have your own website. You can actually list, if you are a part of some organizations and you want to put their website, you can list those here too. It's a good way to kind of promote them a little bit and remind people that you are affiliated with them. So that's a really nice way to use the website section. You don't have to list your phone number here. If you want to and you want to be easily accessible, you can. Keep in mind, some people may be able to scrape this information and they may call you. But I've tried it with my phone number visible and not, and I haven't gotten too much spam or people calling me. So it's up to you how accessible you want to be. You would want to list your email here. Now you can list your student email. If you have a personal email, you could also list that here. But just pick the one that you check the most and where you want to be, where you want to receive your LinkedIn correspondence. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll set up our LinkedIn profile with, some old email and we forget that we don't use it anymore. So somebody may be trying to email you there from LinkedIn and you have an old email here. So make sure you have the one that you use updated. Right in this section, you'll be able to update that if you have not updated it in a while. Okay. If you use Twitter, you can list that here. I don't really use Twitter, but mine is still listed here. So it is what it is. All right, so just make sure you look at your contact info section. It is right at the top of your profile, right below like your name. So just make sure to update that. I always like to point that out. All right, so now let's go to the fun stuff. I love LinkedIn headlines. I love a good LinkedIn headline. So your headline is that area that shows up just below your name. This section is very, very important. It is one of the most important sections on your profile. So do spend some time thinking through what to put here. Your LinkedIn headline should be based on your career focus. So you'll see a couple examples of, students here, what type of program they're in. So as a student, you can be very creative with what you put here. You can talk about your major. You can talk about what type of research you're doing if you're involved in research. You can talk about your volunteer work. You can talk about any of that in your headline. But keep in mind, this is what people will see first. You also want to make sure that you have any keywords that you want to be associated with in this section. So if you do want research in there, if you want chemistry or pre-med or anything like that in the headline, make sure you choose very, very good keywords so you are found when somebody is typing in a search on LinkedIn. Okay. So it's not the most, I work with a lot of business leaders, and for them, this section is like critical to be found and to do lead generation. I think for our purposes, it should be more a reflection of where you're headed. So what are you doing now and where are you headed? If you want to put future physician in here, future medical leader, anything like that, you can too. So it kind of projects where you're headed, even though you're not quite there yet. Okay. So you can be creative with this section. I like to weave in a little bit of emoji in this section too to make it a little more fun because I feel like LinkedIn can be a little bit dry. So it's up to you, but match it to your personality as well. So here's the formula. Again, this is a very, very basic but standard formula that will really help you nail this section. So the LinkedIn headline formula, 4 parts. So who you are. So that would be like student, future medical leader. Maybe you want to focus on your work as well as being a student. Whatever that is, the who you are, what you would call yourself, how you identify as a professional now, then whom you help. Now, this may be relevant to some of you, and you're like, well, I'm a student, I'm like studying, so I don't really know who I'm helping. But are you a part of any volunteer organizations? Are you part of any leadership organizations? Are you involved in activities in school, outside of school, extracurriculars? Talk about that, because that makes you interesting. A lot of people will just put student at this school and leave it. It's really boring. We want to know what you're doing. How are you making a difference? So whom you help should be focused on those things. If you're like, student isn't the only thing I do, I also am a part of these other organizations, or I'm really passionate about these specific causes. That could also be interesting as well. And then how you help. What are you doing? What are you actually doing? What are you focused on? How are you making a difference in your community, at your school, in other organizations? And then results you generate. This one, it's different for each person. You may feel a little uncomfortable, like, no, what results I generate. I'm working with this organization. Sure. This one can be a little bit tricky, I think, to get it just right. So if you're like, Mindy, I am not quite sure what results I generate. Like for me, I help people develop LinkedIn strategies. So the results they're getting is a LinkedIn strategy or a social selling program. So if you don't have something that specific yet, just skip over that section, focus on who you are, whom you help, and how you help them. Okay. But I always like to include that last one, just in case you've done something really awesome and you want to talk about those results. All right. So your LinkedIn headline, keep in mind that it follows you around LinkedIn. So make it count. Everywhere your name goes, your LinkedIn headline goes. If you send a connection invitation, your LinkedIn headline is right alongside that connection invitation on LinkedIn. So the two are always together. So just make sure that it feels good to you and that it resonates and you're happy with it. All right, so we're going to transition a little bit to the about section. This one, you look at this, you're like, that has a lot of characters, Mindy. That's a lot of characters. That's a lot of writing. So with the about section, this is a little bit of a summary of your focus and your story. So like we looked at earlier with the different examples of people who are filmed, there was one student that did a great job of like telling her story and where she's headed and what she's looking to do in the future. This about section is a great place to tell your story. So some of you may have started working on your applications to medical school. You may have started working on your personal statement. If you have, information that you have over there might be perfect for this about section because that is all relevant stuff. That is all relevant to what you're doing. So if you have any type of bio, if you have any type of summary, if you've written anything along those lines, use that as a starting point for your LinkedIn about section, because that will help you kind of get across who you are, what you stand for, what you want to do, and tell a little bit of your story. Definitely add the personal elements to your story too. Like if you have overcome any specific challenges, if you are a part of any advocacy groups, anything like that really brings your profile to life. It doesn't make you feel like another student with a 4.0 going to this college. Like, okay, great. This is all nice to know, but why should we care? So make people care in this section. This is really, really important to do in the about section. All right, so in this section, you want to focus on how you got from there to here. That's really, really important too, to tell your story. Where did you start from and how did you get to the point where you are now? Okay, so, and also think about what's your superpower. Like all of us have something we're really good at, and it's not just studying. Okay, let's not focus on that. Like I'm a great student. Okay, we get that. Okay. I can't, sweetie. I can't. Sorry, my daughter's here. It's okay. I can't, sweetie. So what's your superpower? So when it comes to your studies and your extracurriculars, really think through what you're extra good at, because that matters a ton when you are trying to get across your story and let people know what you're focused on. And then why should someone connect with you? So connecting is a really, really important on LinkedIn. building your network there. So invite people to connect with you in your about section, and give them a good reason. So when they come to your profile, they're like, oh, I totally get that. I totally understand why I should connect with you. And your story really resonated. So have that warmth, I think, to your LinkedIn profile. It should not feel like a dry, boring, old resume. Okay. So add a little bit of life to this section. All right. So with this section too, you want to keep in mind your LinkedIn headline is your first impression. So that's what people see at the very beginning. And as we see in this image, that is not a great headline. He needs to work on his headline. But your second impression is your LinkedIn about. So when people are interested in your profile, they go, oh, I liked your headline. Then they come to the about and they're like, whoa, you actually spent the time to write something meaningful here that tells me about who you are as a human. This is great. This is the second impression. So you're building on that really great headline by telling them a little bit of a story. You don't have to use all 2,600 characters here. It doesn't have to be as long as mine, but you do want to focus on your story and make sure that comes across, okay? So your LinkedIn about, tell your student story and your future vision. Think about those two things as your themes. Okay, how did you get to where you are? What do you want to do in the future? Okay. So a good way to open, I'll just talk about the opening and the closing for this about section. So your opening should be a really good question. You can lead with a question, especially if you are an advocate for like an underrepresented group. You know, maybe you ask a really good question that gets people thinking or considering their biases or something like that. That's like, whoa, that kind of pulls them out of their typical mindset, like, oh, this is student profile, but this person is really passionate about, you know, furthering this mission. You could also start with a profound statement, maybe why you want to go into the field of medicine, or maybe start telling your story. You know, you could start with the story here and what has brought you to this point. So there's a lot of different ways to start your about section, but you want it to be really compelling. You want it to be interesting. It's better to start this section with something that doesn't say I am. I know that was one of the examples we showed. I am a pre-med student. Like, okay, and she did tell her story, but what could make this section a little stronger is not starting with I, ideally, but starting with a good question, a statement, something you believe, maybe 3 to 4 power words that you like, that maybe you operate at the intersection of these, you know, 3 words. I like to start my profiles that way, like, you know, growth, acceleration, pre-med, you know, and just like you can figure out what those words would be for you, but 3 words that really resonate with you, and then kind of start telling your story. So a lot of different ways and creative ways to do this. Then you want to end your about section with a good call to action. So you want to name your target audience. So whoever you want to connect with, maybe it's peers, colleagues, maybe it's physicians you want to connect with. Maybe it's people at different medical schools or medical school students because that's where you want to go. You know, it could be whoever you want it to be, but call them out. You know, say, I would love to connect with these 1, 2, or 3 groups of people, and then ask them to connect with you. So just say it there. Say, I would love to connect with you here on LinkedIn. You'd be surprised how many people will read that section and go, oh, you want to connect with me? Yes, I would like to connect with you too. So again, I'm a marketer, so it's all about calls to action. You know, it's like remind people what you want them to do when they come to your profile. Connect, connect, connect. All right, so we're going to transition now a little further down the profile to your experience sections. So why do these sections even matter? It's really, really important to add your credibility to this section. So if you are a student, like we looked at before, add your school to this section. If you're a part of some organizations at your school, like I'm part of like the pre-professionals health club, you know, it's like whatever groups you're a part of at your school, you can list them here in this section. And also you could list your major here, because if school is your main focus, your main thing, list it in your experience section, because that really, really helps people understand that and reinforce that you are a student and you're focused on your studies. Now, if you also have a side job, or maybe you have a full-time job and you're kind of juggling work and school, it's kind of where I'm at the moment, you can also list your job here as well. So you can be pretty creative with what goes in the experience section. As we saw in those examples, you can also list clubs or groups, anything like that that you're a part of can also go in the experience section. The one thing you don't want to do is leave this blank. Even if you're a student, don't leave it blank. Put something here. So have at least 1 or 2 experiences in this section so people don't go, oh, there's nothing here. Like, what are you doing? People on LinkedIn expect to see at least a couple of things in the experience section. So make sure to add them and make sure to link to the appropriate LinkedIn page. So you'll see here on this example, you'll see all the logos of the pages and companies. Make sure that you do link to the proper page when you're updating this section. It's really easy to do. When you start typing it in, you'll see the LinkedIn page pop up for the organization or the school that you're looking for. I think just about every single school is on LinkedIn these days, so you'll be able to pull that into this section very, very easily. So the experience section gives you a little bit of a boost. It reinforces the about story with the facts of where you're working and where you're studying. So people got hooked with your headline because it was so good. They read your about story and they're like, wow, you're an awesome person. Now they're coming to your experience section on your profile and learning a little bit more about, oh, when did you start going to school? Oh, you're doing this as a side job, or you're volunteering, or you're a part of this organization. So you're kind of giving them the facts in the experience section. So it doesn't have to be written as creatively here. You're literally dates, make sure you hook to the correct LinkedIn page. Make sure you list your roles and what you're doing in those roles. And that's about it. So don't feel like you have to get too creative in this section. It is not a resume. It is a little bit more streamlined than a resume would be. So if you have 5 experience sections, great. Like I mentioned, you don't have 5, just focus on the 2 to 3 that you do have. Pull in your education here in this section. But always, ideally, like I said, always have a current experience. If you feel like you really need to explain a period of time where you were taking a career break, I know some people in my family have done that to take care of one of our family members who is ill. You can put that here. So make sure to, if you feel like you have a gap in time that can't really be explained by school or work, you can use the career break option and explain what you were doing during that time. And again, look for the common thread in your work and studies. As you're writing out these sections, what is the common thread? Do you like working with people? Are you really interested in research? Are you part of a lot of leadership organizations? Is there a certain cause that you're really passionate about? Think about the theme. Think about what people are taking away as they're scanning through your experience section. What type of pre-medical student are you? What type of future medical leader are you? Think about that theme as people are looking through this section. So I call it the common thread. So it's kind of like your common thread that weaves through each experience to what you're doing now. Again, you're reminding them of what you're doing in the future and what you're doing now to set you up for that future. Okay. So in this section also, keywords. Keywords are important. Remember to use the most searched terms. Now, you may not know what those search terms are. There's not really a place online where you can get those search terms, but just think of the keywords and the themes that are meaningful to you and make sure to weave those into your profile, even if it's just like 5 or 6 of them. Maybe it's research. Maybe you're interested in cardiology. Maybe you're interested in heart health or mental health. Whatever those key themes and keywords are, kind of weave them through your profile. Just kind of at the end, just look through your profile and make sure they are there in a few of those sections. All right, so now we're to your accomplishments. So we've done the book, we've done the hard work, heavy lifting. We got the headline, got our headshot, we got our header image, we've got our about section, we've done the experiences. Now we get to do all the fun stuff. So I call this all the LinkedIn extras. So you don't have to do all of these. Keep that in mind. If you have them, add them. If you don't, that's fine. But just know that there are places on LinkedIn where you can add really neat stuff. So the featured section, I showed you this on one of the profiles. I have it on my profile. I love the featured section. So the featured section is kind of like a little highlights reel where it shows people kind of what you're interested in, what you're sharing, if you've been a part of any neat projects, any research, or maybe there was an article that stuck out to you that you wanted to share with people that you felt like was important. Anything can go in the featured section, anything meaningful to you. So you can feature your best highlights here too. If you were a part of any really neat projects, if you volunteered and maybe that organization was featured in the news, you can do something like that in this featured section. So you can be very, very creative. It doesn't have to be all you. It could be themes and articles and content that you care about as well. So you can feature popular LinkedIn posts in this section. So if you are sharing, some of you may be sharing content on LinkedIn, some of you may not be. There's no right or wrong answer there. But if you are sharing LinkedIn posts on LinkedIn, you can feature things that are popular. You could also create like a highlights reel or portfolio of work if you have some, especially as you start building your start building your portfolio with things like research. If you get published, anything like that would be awesome in this section. So you can really get creative with what goes here. If you're involved in any videos or work, research, awards, anything like that can go in this section. So just keep in mind, this is a way to kind of bring your content and the work that you're doing inside school, outside school, bring it to life in this section. So make it easy for people to scan. They're just going to scan through it. They're going to likely see the first 1 or 2 things. So don't feel like you have to have 15 things here. 3 to 5 is great for this section if you have them. And think about the intention of your featured section. What do you want people to do when they look at your featured section? Ideally, it should be dynamic and just update it when you think of it, when you do something cool, something interesting. This is a really great place to put all of that info. So again, like I said, 3 to 5 featured items, more if you have them and you want to. All right, so let's move on to education, licenses, and certifications. Okay, so education, really easy. Just list your education experiences here and list your anticipated graduation date. So if you haven't graduated yet, do list that here, like when you expect to graduate. That's important for people to know, especially if you are, trying to get into some research or you're trying to get some part-time work opportunities or anything like that. Put your anticipated graduation date in this section. Licenses, certifications, if you have them, they give you a little bit of a credibility boost, especially if they're related to your studies. So add those that matter most, and anything that would boost your credibility, show commitment to your community, anything like that is helpful in this section. If you volunteer, I think a lot of us probably do in some way, shape, or form. If you're volunteering, put it in this section. Like, it's really important to make sure to list it. Even if it's in the experiences section above, list it again down here. So it's okay if things are on your profile more than once, but make sure to list your volunteer experiences. That lets people know that you are involved, that you are a giver, that you really want to support organizations that are meaningful to you and that matter to you. So make sure to list them on your profile. And again, you can look at mine too if you're looking for like an easy framework. You don't have to write much here. You can kind of take copy from the page of the organization, just like their little about section, plug it in here, and then just put your role, whatever your role is at that organization. Keep it really, really simple, but do list things. It shows people that you are committed and that you care. So, yep, like I said, volunteer experiences show you care about your community and that you're already involved. You're not waiting for the future. You are already doing things now. So with your volunteer section, if you have any leadership roles, if you're doing any clinical work, clinical experiences, you can put all that here too. I've seen people that have even put like shadowing and any events or conferences that they attended or maybe participated in. You can list that in this volunteer section. It is very, very flexible. All right, so we are almost to the end of the profile. Your top 50 skills. Okay, so at the very bottom of your profile, you'll see skills, and you can list up to 50, which if this is your first time looking at your profile, that feels like a lot of skills to try to think up. So what you'll want to do here, I usually tell people start with like 25. Most of us can think of 25 things that we're relatively good at, or 25 keywords. So in this section, you want to think of things like that are related to leadership, community service, maybe volunteering, if you're doing research, things related to studying, the different things you're studying. You could actually kind of list them all out here, what you're interested in the future too. If there are certain specialties you're interested in, you can list keywords related to that. So what I recommend too is look at other peers' profiles for ideas. Like look at some other students or some people that are already physicians or maybe medical students and see what they've listed in their skill section, and you can use the same skills, as long as they're relevant to you. But that's an easy way to just add some skills to your profile. They're helpful just from the perspective of keywords and searching when people are looking for you. And if you are applying, any of you who are applying for jobs via LinkedIn or part-time roles, the skills matter a lot. If you are job seeking, because when you are applying for those roles, it will say you need to have these 10 skills listed on your profile. So make sure if you are a job seeker, make sure that you match the skills in your section to whatever you're applying for in that role. There's usually like 10 of them listed on LinkedIn. Okay. I know we're going through a lot here, almost there. All right, so publications and patents. If you are published, if you have contributed to anything, if you have done any research, good for you if you have already. Make sure to list that in this section. It's a really great place to do that. If you've done any posters or presentations at your schools, at different conferences, anything like that, it can be listed in this publication section. And it does make you look like you are very seasoned. It makes you look very studious. Also makes you, if you are trying to get into doing some more research, it adds a layer of credibility to your profile. So even if you think, Mindy, it's kind of small, I didn't really have, my name isn't the first name listed, that's okay. Just like if you were involved in any way, you can list that publication on your profile. Projects. Okay, a lot of us have worked on projects. Sometimes they're really neat. Sometimes they're kind of like not that great. If you have worked on a project with like a group, with anybody, with your school, any type of project that you feel like is worth calling attention to, you can add that to your profile. I like to say sometime during undergrad, there's probably going to be like an opportunity for 3 to 5 really neat projects that you're going to want to focus on and call attention to on your profile. So think about that. Like each year, think about 1 or 2 projects that you've worked on throughout the year. This could be from extracurriculars as well, that you want to list on your profile. And you can also add people. So if you did it in a group of people, you can actually link to their profiles from this section, which is kind of neat as well if you worked on a neat project together. Courses. So there is a section for courses. It's a little bit different than education. Like education is kind of like your formal education. Courses would be like anything outside of that formal education. So anything that doesn't feel like official enough to be in the education section, you can throw it into courses, especially if you want to call attention to it. Like maybe you did like a week training on this specific thing. Make sure to list it in courses. It's helpful. Again, people on LinkedIn search. So they'll type in keywords, and this may help you because they may be searching for people who have had this type of training. So they should be relevant to what you're doing now, but you can technically put whatever you want in the courses section if you actually took that course. Honors and awards, if you have them, add them. A lot of people are like, it wasn't that big, or I got this in high school. Add your honors and awards to this section. You can brag a little or a lot. If you have honors and awards to add, they don't have to be necessarily related to your career, but it is kind of nice to see a few awards in this section. It just kind of, again, is reinforcing your leadership skills and your involvement. Organizations. So if you are a member, again, of organizations, you could have them in your volunteer section. You could also list them. You're like, Mindy, I'm a member, but I don't really participate. So maybe I don't feel comfortable putting them in the volunteer section, but I am technically like a member. Then put them in your organization section, because at least that shows you're affiliated with them. And people do search for organizations and people who are affiliated with them on LinkedIn. So you want your name to pop up for that. So just list them there. They're near the bottom of the profile. So they're not like in your face, but it is good to list these organizations there. They could be listed again in multiple places on your profile too. All right. So we're going to transition from the profile. I will answer all the profile questions. We can hop into LinkedIn and I can screen share at the end as well. But I want to talk a little bit about getting connected on LinkedIn. And when you are on LinkedIn, it is really important that you do try to build your network on LinkedIn and that you do get connected with other people. So you are going to likely receive what we call inbound connections. So that means you're receiving a connection from other people on LinkedIn. Sometimes they're kind of spammy. Sometimes they're actually good. Sometimes they're from people that are in this, maybe you did a group project together and somebody wants to connect with you afterwards. So you do want to check them periodically. If you're not on LinkedIn a lot, check your connections about once a week, once every 2 weeks, kind of go through them Just say yes, no, yeah, or accept, ignore, whichever ones make sense for you. But be selective about whom you accept. A lot of times we feel pressure to just say yes to everybody, and we think, oh, maybe they're going to feel bad if I ignore them. They're not even going to know that you ignored them. So be selective. It should make sense when you're accepting the connection invitation. It should make sense for you to be connected with them, for them to be connected with you. All right. So don't accept stuff from like spammers, salesy people. My rule number one is it has to have obvious mutual benefit. So there has to be a good reason. In other words, there should be some synergy. Like for me right now, I'm connecting with a lot of people that are a part of NAMI, which is, for mental health and mental health awareness. So for me, there's a lot of synergy there because I'm a member of that organization and trying to get more involved. So whenever I see somebody from NAMI, I'm like, yeah, awesome, synergy. So just kind of think through accepting connection invitations from people where you're like, there could be potential synergy, or maybe there already is. Maybe you're both pre-meds. It just depends, but make sure that there is that obvious mutual benefit, some synergy there. And they have to, for me, they have to write a good message. Like, I don't like blank connection invitations. Like, add a reason why I should connect with you, or share a little bit about you so I know who you are and why you're reaching out to connect. So a lot of times I don't accept connection invitations if there's no message there. Because I really want to know why the person wants to connect. Rule number 2, when to ignore or decline the invite if there's a sales pitch. Like if they have something like, I will help you get 50 leads in 1 month. I'm like, okay, that's an obvious no, I will not accept your connection invitation. If there's no obvious reason, you're like, I have no idea why this person is reaching out to connect. They're like some real estate person trying to connect with me. I'm not looking for a house at the moment. Then I won't connect with them. Also, if they have an incomplete LinkedIn profile, like if you go to their profile and like you can't see their headshot, or it looks kind of like haphazard, there are a lot of bots and kind of like spammy accounts on LinkedIn. So don't accept, if anybody looks a little bit fishy, just ignore them and don't accept that connection invitation. All right, so LinkedIn do's and don'ts. All right, these are my favorites. So I got 10 LinkedIn do's and don'ts and how to interact on LinkedIn, and then we will wrap it. I know I talk a lot. We had a lot of slides. All right, so number 1 is social capital. So on LinkedIn, you always want to give to others before you ask for anything in return. There are a lot of people, unfortunately, on LinkedIn who are there to just make themselves popular, to go viral, to build a big audience, make money. They don't really care about their followers or fans or the connections. So they will, a lot of times you're like, wow, they are like really aggressive and how they're approaching me, either in messaging or their type of content. So you don't want to be that person. You want to be a giver. You want to be seen as someone that supports people in your network. So if you ask too frequently, like, for example, I work with some authors and all they want to talk about is their book that is for sale. Like, please buy my book. Please leave me a review of my book. And it can be a little crazy making for your audience. So don't do that. You really want to give more and support people on LinkedIn. And that kind of good karma will come back to you on LinkedIn as well. Number 2, intentionally engage if you can. I know we're all busy. I know I'm not good about doing it on the daily, but at least a few times per week, if you can just log into LinkedIn for like 2 minutes, maybe check your connection invitations, look at your LinkedIn feed, see if any interesting messages came through. This can make a big difference on LinkedIn. You don't have to spend much time here. You don't have to post content, but if you add a comment or repost somebody else's content on LinkedIn, make a big difference and make you look very active and very engaged on LinkedIn. So it's something that's really, really good to do. Again, if you can engage with 2 to 3 posts from other people for every 1 post that you share, also it makes you look like you are more of a giver than just trying to talk about yourself. Number 3, common sense. Common sense matters a lot. Like, if you wouldn't say it in real life, don't say it on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a bit more professional in nature too. So just keep that in mind. If you are, maybe you're going through all your socials and maybe you're on TikTok and Instagram, and then you hop over to LinkedIn, you have to act a little bit differently here than you do on those other channels. So make sure, think about when you go to school or when you go to work, you're in that professional mindset and you carry yourself a little bit differently, maybe talk a little bit more formally. The same is applicable on LinkedIn. So just keep that in mind. It is not as casual as other channels. And then get comfortable interacting and using LinkedIn. It displays a level of confidence. So if you have something insightful to share, if there is something that's recently happened, current events that you want to talk about and share your perspective, maybe you came across some interesting research you want to share, anything like that, that's really good stuff for LinkedIn. So share that here on LinkedIn. People like thought leadership. People like to be in the know. They like to hear from different people's perspectives too. So make sure to share it in that professional way. All right, so if you're going to comment on anything, always read the comments first. Don't just jump in and start typing. This is kind of a big one on LinkedIn. So many people just want to like say something and they don't read the other conversations below that post. So make sure to scan through all the comments before you add your own if there are multiple comments on a post already. And then if you are going to comment, I call it post and ghost. Don't do the post and ghost where you leave a comment and somebody responds to you and you never look at it again. So if you're going to comment, just expect that you may need to continue that conversation and look for people to reply to your comment. LinkedIn will notify you. So you'll get a notification saying so-and-so replied to your comment. So don't worry, you won't miss it, but just don't post and ghost. LinkedIn, people are different here. There's like this sense of camaraderie and etiquette that people want to be sure that you follow. So when you engage on a post, make sure you follow up if somebody does want to continue that conversation. Number 5, no trolling or hijacking. So even if you disagree with the person posting, like in most cases, just don't comment. Like just avoid it. Just kind of like move on. It's fine. You don't need to add your 2 cents. We don't want any like Twitter wars over here. Like just move on. So if it's your professional obligation to respond, like sometimes you really feel like, okay, I have authority and credibility and I should say something. You can, but just do so in a courteous manner. If the person doesn't like it, they'll delete your comment anyways. They can do that on LinkedIn. So for the most part, just kind of move on. Just ignore those posts and unfollow the person if you feel like you need to. Then also a note on not safe for work posts. I haven't seen many of these days, but if you ever do come across a post on LinkedIn, you can report it to LinkedIn immediately and do so because that keeps LinkedIn a very safe place. And because all of us are doing this and really, really cautious, stuff doesn't happen in the feeds like on some other channels where I've seen it. So if you see foul language, anything like that, that does not meet professional standards, flag it and report it. So there's like 3 little dots in the corner of the post. Click on those and you're able to report it to LinkedIn and they will take it down. So this is really, really good. Just keep it a safe space for everyone. Number 7, 2 topics to avoid for the most part. Religion and politics. Unless you are an activist or something, or, is very, very important to you and core to who you are. In those cases, you can talk about them, but just be aware that some people are very, very sensitive on LinkedIn to these 2 topics, and it can be perceived and misperceived and be very polarizing. So if you can avoid it, try not to get involved in anything too controversial or heated debates on LinkedIn. It really could be misinterpreted, even if you mean it with the best of intentions. So just how to keep yourself safe on that front. Number 8, no clickbait posts. So I've seen a lot of people do this where they're just trying to get likes, or they'll post like a big selfie of themselves because they want everyone to like it. They want to take up the whole feed, or they want to drive people to some like webinar event, but that's all that they post, and they don't really post anything of substance. They're not giving anything to the community. It's not a good look. Okay. So if you are posting on LinkedIn, make sure what you're posting is very thoughtful, that it's not clickbaity, that's not fluffy stuff. You really want to provide substance, and LinkedIn is very big on this right now. So if you are going to be posting content on LinkedIn, if you are sharing your perspective and you're sharing thought leadership, LinkedIn will boost you in the feed. So do continue to post that type of content, but stay away from like clickbaity stuff, which I think most of us already know this already, but always like to point it out. Don't try to play the algorithm here. Post high quality content. Tagging. All right, so tagging, I know it's kind of similar on other channels too, where you don't want to tag people that don't want to be tagged. So on LinkedIn, you can tag people, and a lot of people will do this just to get their post to be popular, but you really just don't want to tag someone unless they will be happy that you did. So if you have some friends and you're like, oh, I want them to see this, or they could add some insight here, tag them. That's great. But really think through before tagging people or tagging companies. Don't tag Microsoft in your post or anything like the big name companies. Because for the most part, they're not going to appreciate it. They're not going to see it. Now, one thing I do want to call attention to is one really great way to get the attention of your university or community college. Do tag them. So if you do something on campus that is awesome, the social media team wants to know. Like I recently did this. So I was I go to Indiana University Northwest, and I had to bring my kids to school with me that day. And I reached out to student services, made sure it was okay. And they're like, yeah, this is great. So my kids wanted to take pictures. So we took some pictures, and then I shared a post and thanked them for, helping non-trads like me allow me to feel comfortable bringing my kids to college that day. And they reshared it, and it was a really big deal. And they said, thank you so much for sharing that. It really helped, their social team. So do tag the university, especially if you're doing a really cool project or event, because their social media team will see it and they'll want to reshare. So that's a really good way to kind of give back there too. And last one, not too personal. So don't share personal stuff, no tragedy, nothing like that should be shared on LinkedIn. I have seen people do it, and it's just not a good look. You really want it to be professional here. So share that stuff like on Facebook or with your family and friends, but just don't bring it to LinkedIn. All of your posts on LinkedIn, even if they're kind of on the personal side, they should somehow tie into your career focus, your expertise, your education. They should all tie into those different themes somehow, some way. Okay. So keep that other stuff over on the other channels. And again, this is not TikTok. This is not Instagram, like stuff that is too informal. You really don't want to be on LinkedIn. It should be very, very professional. And just kind of keep that in mind as you're sharing posts. All right. So kind of to wrap it all up. So next steps after this, update your LinkedIn profile. If you don't have one, create one. It'll take you like 5 minutes. You don't have to fill out every section. I know we talked about a lot of sections and it may feel overwhelming, but just focus on one thing. So if you don't have a profile, create a LinkedIn profile. If you have one, but you haven't looked at your headline, update your headline. Maybe put up a new headshot. Maybe put a nice little banner behind your headshot. Maybe tackle that about section, which could really tell your story. Maybe add your experiences to your profile or add some extras if you have some research or publications or projects you want to add, and then start building those skills. So think about the keywords and skills that should be listed on your profile as well. And then think about connecting and networking with people because it's a really neat place to be. Of all the social channels, I love LinkedIn. I think it's definitely my personal favorite and where I've made the most meaningful connections. And so get started now because it will definitely help you as you're progressing, as you're getting ready for that next chapter. All right. So I will end it there. And if anybody wants to reach out afterwards, this is my email. You can also just look me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with you there as well. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, we do have a couple questions in the chat, so I'll be reading them out. All right, the first one is, does every LinkedIn account have the capability of adding the experiences section on it?
Oh, good question. Yes, so even if you don't have a paid LinkedIn account, everything that I talked about on the profile, you can add. So there's nothing that I talked about today that you can't add. There are a few little minor things that you get with like a paid account, but it has nothing to do with like the profile or the sections.
Perfect, thank you. All right, our next question is, what are the benefits of paying for LinkedIn now as opposed to later when I'm in medical school?
Excellent question. I feel like every single time I do a LinkedIn talk, somebody always asks about paying for LinkedIn. Okay, so the scoop with paying for LinkedIn, I don't recommend it for the most part, unless you are a job seeker. So if you are a job seeker and you are trying to get, a side job or anything like that on LinkedIn, and you need those career-focused features in mails, then that can be helpful. If you are looking to do like lead generation or anything like that, any extra marketing, or you're trying to connect with a lot of people. So if you are on LinkedIn, you're like, I want to connect with, I want to get to that 500 number. I want to reach out to all these people. Then you probably will need some type of paid LinkedIn account because you will be limited in how many people you can reach out to and the way you can reach out to them. But for the most part, if you are just using LinkedIn like a normal person, then you definitely don't need to pay for LinkedIn. And I wouldn't recommend it. It's pretty expensive. Even I don't pay for it all the time. I usually kind of toggle it on and off.
One of the things I would recommend is I got my premium LinkedIn because I use a lot of LinkedIn Learning. Is some of the unemployment offices give out premium annual premium stuff. I know also some colleges do and some nonprofits in the community, and so I would just say that I've gotten on LinkedIn Premium, the membership one without paying for it. But you can only do it for like a year, and it's like 300 and something dollars. And so I did it for a year, and I used a lot of the LinkedIn Learning stuff, and then I went off of it. I don't have like a reason to pay for it, but I also my local library has access to LinkedIn Learning. That's like the videos that used to be lynda.com, which is like you could learn like really cool stuff there. But I would just say that that I mean it is a nice feature, but like this thing is $300. That's a lot of money. So I don't know. I use $300 for other things, but if you needed like for a year, like I said, look at the unemployment. There's like unemployment uh nonprofits that are like for job seekers, but also the school too. Like the one I got was through school. Was they had a event that you had to actually did it online too. You had to show up to the Zoom meeting, and you had to be there the whole time. At the end of it, they give it to you. So that's another one too. But
Yeah, that's a good point. I was at Ivy Tech Community College last semester, and they gave free LinkedIn Learning to all the students. So that's a really good point that I hadn't thought of, just to check with your college or with your university and see if they do offer anything like that. Maybe ask student services or career services at your university to just find out, because what's the harm in that? Yeah, really good point.
All right. Our next question we have is LinkedIn a good way to find medical shadowing?
I have not actually used it for medical shadowing, but I couldn't see why not. I think the one problem I've noticed, though, in trying to connect with physicians, a lot of them aren't on LinkedIn. Still, I would say some of them are, like some of the really savvy ones are, but I will go to events too, and I'm trying to connect with physicians afterwards. And a lot of times they are not on LinkedIn. So I think I would be a little bit hesitant to recommend that as a really great tool. What you could try to do, though, is actually do a search on LinkedIn and just see if anybody pops up that may be in your area. So you'll definitely want to narrow it down to your geographical area and see who pops up, because the really savvy ones are there. And even their profile may not be that great, but at least they're there and you may be able to reach them that way. But I found like good old fashioned email or asking around has been a little bit more helpful on that front.
yeah, I would just say that this is we get this asked all the time, and we did a whole talk on this, and I'll put it in the chat. Most doctors are not tech savvy. And so I think, obviously, if you want to shadow someone, you want them to be close. So we did a whole talk on this. But physicians, first of all, they get inundated with hundreds of emails, so they try to avoid it. One of the other things that's happening right now in healthcare, well, it's happened for a while, but it's EMR, electronic medical records. So doctors that are on, like the emails that they get are things from their EMR. So they have hundreds of emails, and they probably don't even check their personal email or any of those messages. So I think the good old fashioned of, going actually like dropping off a letter. Yes, that means that you're going to have to sit down and write like a good letter, print it, put it in an envelope and drop it off. I think you get a lot better. What is it? You get more juice for your squeeze, or squeeze for your. Anyways, you get a better return on that. And like I said, busy people don't usually use a lot of those, and they should, but to them, like they're not looking for a job. They already have like a job. And I think a lot of like LinkedIn has been, it's been sold as a job seeking tool. So somebody who has a job that's working 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week is really not going to be on LinkedIn looking for a job. Some of them are, but I mean, it's kind of like the whole shotgun, approach. You try everything to hit something, and so it's not a bad thing. But to me, it's just like the most of the doctors I know are not on LinkedIn, and if they are, they don't check it. Like I had a friend who was on LinkedIn, and I didn't have his contacts anymore, and reached out to him on LinkedIn, never heard a response until I saw one of our other friends that had his number, and I just texted him and he responded. So it's just, throwing that out there.
All right. Our next question we have is, when I update my profile, for example, listing another volunteer experience, does the update get automatically announced to my followers?
Oh, good question. No, it does not. So LinkedIn used to have it toggled on. Always double check. LinkedIn, especially in the experience section, if you are adding a new experience and it is to present, double check when you are adding it. It's in that little box. When you are adding that experience, it should be toggled off to like announce it, but it's right at the top of that experience section. It'll say, do you want to like share this with your network? So it will be in the experience section, not in the volunteer section, which I think is great. So yeah, you're okay updating those sections. The one section you want to pay attention to is the experience section if it's a present experience. Usually it's toggled off, but just double check before you click share. Otherwise, you're going to notify everyone and you may not want to do that.
All right, our next question is, my LinkedIn has three disciplines: business, politics, and now pre-med. Is it a good idea to keep these up because they are part of my experience, or should I move more towards what I'm pursuing now, like business?
Okay, so if you are pursuing business, if you're not like pursuing politics as much, and also if pre-med, if that can kind of feel like one that you may not want to focus wholly on until you get further in the process, and maybe you're applying to medical schools and stuff. So I'm not sure where you are in the process. I definitely would lean more into the business just because LinkedIn, by its very nature, is very business oriented. So you are going to get more people attracted to your profile, more people interested in your profile from the higher focus on business. So again, I'm kind of similar where I have my business and I also have my pre-med study. So I put the pre-med at the end of my headline, but not the beginning of my headline, because I really want to focus a little bit more on my business stuff on LinkedIn. So that's what I would tend to do. I wouldn't hide it. I would definitely list the stuff, but in your headline, you may want to lean more into the business side if you have that option and that feels good to you. Good question.
Is there a color scheme to avoid?
Oh, color schemes. Good one. I would avoid the LinkedIn blue. Because if you do anything in the LinkedIn blue or the LinkedIn color scheme, it's going to blend in and it will not stand out. Also, in that header, the header area, so the one that's right behind your headshot, make sure it's not white. Because I've seen some people that didn't have a border and it's just like kind of white or that off-white and gray, and it just kind of blends into the background. So ideally you want bright colors. Think about like when you are posting, I'm a marketer, so when you're posting on different social channels, it's like the yellows, the oranges, you're thinking of like brighter colors is ideal. Sometimes you can't control that if you're featuring something that isn't really that bright. But ideally, if you can play with that color scheme a little bit, brighter is better.
Is there a benefit to having the LinkedIn app?
Say it depends on how mobile you are, and if you do everything on mobile, then having the app is helpful. Now, I like to segment. I'm a social media by trade, but I don't like to be on social media all the time unless, I like to segment it into like my work time, my LinkedIn time. So for me, I don't like to use the LinkedIn app. I don't have the mobile push notifications on because to me it's very, very distracting and I won't get my studies done or my work done. So if you are that type of person, you're like, I don't want to be plugged in all the time. I don't want push notifications. Then you can leave the app on your mobile devices, but maybe just turn off the notifications and the push notifications because LinkedIn will send you a lot of them. And you can actually change this in your LinkedIn settings as well. Like the notifications I like to receive sometimes I like connections, but I like them all grouped together. in, like a once a day email or something like that. I like it when I get a notification from LinkedIn about messages that I haven't responded to in like a couple of days. So those are helpful. But beyond that, LinkedIn will send you a ton of notifications. So just make sure to check your settings, especially if you do want to use the mobile app. But if you are always on the go and you're like, Mindy, I will never check LinkedIn if it is not on my phone, then add it, but just silence the notifications and check it intentionally.
All right, and the last question we have right now is how do we get to the featured section? And can you go over how to do the activity section again?
Yes. Okay. Let me share my screen because I think that's probably going to be easier and we can take a peek at that. All right. So with the featured section, on your profile here, when you scroll down, if you do not have a featured section already, then you're not going to see this. You're like, how do I add it to my profile? So if you have a featured section, you can easily add stuff here. You can see, like, just add anything else that you want. You don't have a section, like I talked about a lot of sections today, and you may not have them all on your profile. So any of those sections that you do want to add profile section is where you would add a profile section. So you click that little thing at the top that says add profile section. Under recommended, you'll see featured. That's where you will add the featured. It'll kind of pop into a new window and you'll be able to add content here. And then you can also remove content. So if you're like, I don't want this featured anymore, you can click to add or remove the content. Once you have added your content, it'll show right at the top here. That's why I said it's nice to have like 3 to 5 things, because if somebody's looking at it on desktop, they'll see like 3 things. If they're looking at it on mobile, they may only see 1 or 2 things before, because the screen is a little bit smaller. So it's nice to have a few things in this section. All right, so you asked about activity as well. So in the activity section here, this is like where your content is going. So if you're posting, if you're commenting, if you have any videos, I don't think most of us are doing videos, but if you have those would show up there. Images, articles, newsletters. I didn't talk about that, but that's kind of content-y stuff. Any events, all of that shows up under your activity. Now, because I have what we talked about earlier, creator mode, I briefly touched on it. Because I have creator mode turned on, the activity is a little bit bigger than it may be on somebody's profile who does not have creator mode turned on. So it's a little bit more focused on my profile, just to kind of call attention to that. So in the activity section, people will see your activity on LinkedIn. So do be careful. Like if you think you're just like liking something and nobody will see it, they will see it. So make sure you're really thoughtful about the content that you like, especially if it's controversial or anything like that, because it will show up on your profile. So do kind of keep that in mind. And this is what it will look like too if you wanted to look through your content and see, how your content and posts are performing if you share content. You can also look at it by comments. So if you've commented on things, that'll show up here as well. And you can kind of see like the different breakdowns of the different types of activity that are on LinkedIn. But all activity on LinkedIn is visible. So just kind of keep that in mind. I think as you are interacting on LinkedIn, everybody can see everything that you do on LinkedIn. So make sure it is in alignment with the brand that you are putting out there.
All right, I think that's all the questions. If anyone has any more questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A and we can ask them real quick. But for now, I think these are all the questions we have.
I have one question. When you're doing the LinkedIn endorsements and stuff, how do those work? Can you talk a little bit about that? And
yes. Sure. So with endorsements, those are actually those are easy to do for people. So if you, like, for instance, if you want to endorse one of your friends for research, or you worked on a group project together and you want to endorse them for analytics, or, something like that, you can easily do that just by going to their profile. And there's like a little drop down that will allow you to endorse them for something. Endorsements they're kind of like a light touch, like they're okay. They're nice to have. They are not the most important thing on LinkedIn, but it is a nice gesture to endorse somebody for something. But don't do it to a stranger. It's really creepy. Like, I've had people that come and endorse me for Facebook or like content. I'm like, I don't even know who you are, and I don't specialize in Facebook. So it feels a little bit awkward. So make sure you only endorse people that you know and you've actually experienced whatever you're endorsing them for. Integrity is really, really big on LinkedIn. But endorsements are nice. And that will actually show up when people endorse you for a skill, it'll show up in your skills section. So you'll see X number 36 endorsements for leadership or something like that. So once people start endorsing you for a specific keyword, you will notice that more people will probably endorse you for that same keyword as well. So it's a really nice way to give to somebody else, especially if you don't have the opportunity to write them like a recommendation, which is like which is gold on LinkedIn. If you write somebody a recommendation and give that to them via LinkedIn, they put it on their profile, that's a really, really big deal. So I do like recommendations for definitely a little bit more of what would I say, like really, really being thoughtful and commending somebody for something. But endorsements are kind of like the lighter version of that. So hopefully that's helpful.
What about endorsements? Can you go, is that the same thing, recommendation endorsements, or is that different?
Yeah, so endorsements are a little bit different. So endorsements are the ones where you're just like clicking. So it usually goes along with like their skills. So their skills will be like leadership, social media, management, team leadership. Those, and then people will click yes, yes. It's kind of like, yes, I have experienced them. I endorse them for leadership, which is just like takes like 2 seconds to do pretty much to endorse somebody. You can go to their profile to endorse them, or they, if it's somebody endorsing you, they can go to your profile and click to endorse. They could either do that in the skill section, or they can go to the top of your profile and there's like a little drop down of how to engage with that person and you can endorse them there. Now, the opposite of that, well, not the opposite, but kind of like a bigger version of that is the recommendation. So that's where somebody's writing you almost like a letter of recommendation on LinkedIn, just talking about how they've experienced you, what your skills are, what they've really enjoyed. And so that's kind of like the written version of the endorsements. It's definitely, people love recommendations on LinkedIn. If you want to make somebody happy and they use LinkedIn, like write them a recommendation and share that with them. It's a really, really big deal on LinkedIn.
All righty. I guess we don't have any more questions. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Thank you, Mindy, for putting together this talk. It was, I thought I knew a lot about LinkedIn, but I guess I don't. So thank you again. And yeah, and if you have any questions, you could ask them. Somebody says thank you. But yeah, and we'll post this video and also the slides as well. So, all righty. Well, I think it's a Saturday, and everybody go out and get in trouble.